France arrived at this World Cup with maybe the most terrifying attacking lineup the tournament has ever assembled. Kylian Mbappe, Ousmane Dembele, Michael Olise, Bradley Barcola, 16 goals in 6 games. On paper, unstoppable, almost unfair. So explain this to me. How did that team walk into a World Cup semi-final and produce a grand total of nothing? Spain did not just beat France on Tuesday night in Dallas. They schooled them, embarrassed them, made the best forward line on the planet look like it had never met before. But here's where a straightforward defeat turned into a full-blown refereeing storm. Because instead of quietly accepting the beating, France came out after the final whistle absolutely furious, aiming both barrels at the referee FIFA had handpicked for the game. Their managers stood at the podium and openly questioned whether the official was even fit to run a semifinal. They raged about the penalty. They hinted at a whole string of decisions that had supposedly gone against them. Suddenly, the story was not Spain's masterclass at all. It was whether France had been robbed on the biggest night of their tournament. So were they? Or is this the flimsiest excuse we have seen from anyone all summer? Let us get into what the heck actually happened. Start with the football, because the football is damning enough on its own. Spain won 2-0, and honestly, that scoreline flattered France. This was a masterclass in control. Mikel Oyarzabal slotted a first-half penalty, Pedro Porro added a second, and in between and around those goals, Spain simply owned the ball, owned the tempo, owned the game. Rodri, back to the imperious Ballon d'Or form he had before rupturing his ACL, sat in the middle of the pitch and conducted the whole thing like it was a training exercise. Spain have now gone 37 matches unbeaten since March 2024. European champions along the way, and their coach declared them, flatly, the best team in the world. On this evidence, who is arguing? France, the pre-tournament favorites, never got a single foothold. And that fearsome front line, Mbappe's one moment of note was a free kick he ballooned harmlessly over the bar. That was it. The most dangerous attack in world football switched off at the wall. And it's worth naming them, because the no-show was collective. Dembele, so unplayable at his best, was a passenger. Olise, quietly one of the finest creators of the whole tournament, barely touched the ball in a dangerous area. Doué and Barcola offered flashes, and nothing more. This was a group of forwards that had terrorized 5 straight opponents, and Spain made them look ordinary because Spain never let them near the ball in the first place. You cannot be the most feared attack on the planet if you're spending the whole game chasing shadows and defending, and that's exactly what Spain reduced them to. Rodri and Fabian Ruiz passed circles around a French midfield that couldn't get close, and every time France did win it back, they gave it straight away again. Spain didn't need to be spectacular. They just needed to keep the ball, and keeping the ball is the single thing they do better than any team alive. Now here's the story France desperately wanted you to focus on instead: the penalty. In the first half, with the game still goalless, Spain's cross came into the French box. Lucas Digne tried to clear it, spun 180 degrees, and swung his boot straight into Lamine Yamal, who had come sprinting in from his blind side. Salvadoran referee Ivan Barton pointed to the spot immediately. Oyarzabal scored, and France trailed for the first time in the entire tournament. And afterward, manager Didier Deschamps could not let it go. He stood in front of reporters and again asked the same loaded question. Is the referee good enough to officiate a World Cup semi-final? He brought up the officials next to him. He hinted darkly at certain situations, often unfavorable to us. He tried to make the referee the headline. So let's take it seriously and actually look at the penalty, because this is where France's whole grievance falls apart. Was it a penalty? By the book? Yes. There was clear contact inside the box, on an attacking player who had just played the ball. Was it harsh? Sure, a little. Yamal didn't have full possession, and Digne was only trying to clear his lines. But the interpretation of the rule was correct, and it's telling that even France's own defender, Maxence Lacroix, one of only two players who bothered to speak afterward, didn't say it was wrong. He said mildly, "I think it should have been reviewed." That's it. That's the big injustice. A technically correct penalty that maybe deserved a second look. And crucially, this happened in the opening 20 minutes at 0 apiece. It did not rob France of a game they were dominating. France were second best from the first whistle to the last. The penalty didn't cost them this match. It just gave them somewhere to point. And that is why Deschamps going after the referee is so genuinely weak. And it's the heart of this whole mess. Because in the very same breath that he questioned the official, he also admitted the truth. He conceded it was primarily our fault. He admitted France were a step below, technically, against a team that knew exactly what it was doing. He even said, and I promise this is a real quote, "I don't want to sound like a crybaby," which he said immediately before sounding exactly like a crybaby. You do not get to be outplayed for 90 minutes, produce nothing with the finest collection of forwards on the planet, and then stand at a podium and aim shots at the man with the whistle. That is an analysis. It's deflection. And everybody could see it. Spain's coach, Luis de la Fuente, sliced right through it with one line. When things don't go our way, we can always find some excuse. And here's the detail that completely demolishes the victim act, courtesy of Spain's own Rodri, who pointed out that Yamal was being fouled over and over with nothing given, saying 10 or 15 fouls where the kid goes to the ground. In other words, if the referee's leniency favored anyone, it favored France. The one team with a real refereeing grievance that night was Spain. And there's a detail that quietly buries the whole "the ref was against us" narrative. Late in the first half, Barton actually overturned a decision in France's favor, waving away a foul after Dembele went down on the edge of the Spanish box, despite Spanish protests, for reasons that weren't even entirely clear. So this wasn't an official picking on France all night. This was a referee making a spread of calls that landed on both sides, including one that went France's way. Yes, the choice of a CONCACAF referee for a semi-final of this size raised a few eyebrows when it was announced. But raised eyebrows are not the same as a scandal, and a single technically correct penalty in the 19th minute is not the reason a team of this quality mustered nothing for 90 minutes. But the referee whining isn't even the worst of it. Because while the manager was busy blaming the official, his own captain was busy blaming the manager. Publicly, on the record, minutes after the final whistle. Kylian Mbappe, the captain, the talisman, stood in front of the cameras and openly torched Deschamps' tactics. He said France had been outnumbered in the middle of the park. We were 3 against 2 in midfield. That Spain's Rodri and Fabian Ruiz had plenty of time to play, and that France should have gone man-to-man to stop them building. Read that again. That is the captain of France, seconds after a semi-final defeat, telling the world his manager set the team up wrong. That is not a quiet word behind closed doors. That is a public indictment of the head coach's plan on the biggest night of the tournament. When your best player and your manager walk out of the same dressing room pointing in completely opposite directions, you don't have a team anymore. You have a committee of people avoiding a mirror. And here's what makes Deschamps' referee routine look even smaller. Mbappe, for all that he threw his coach under the bus, was at least brutally honest about his team. He said France were too sloppy technically. He said they didn't play the game they